How's it going, everybody? My name is Rinzler here, back again for another video, and welcome back to my Song of Ice and Fire character origins series. Now, I'm very well aware it's been a very long time now since I've made an episode of this series, about 2 months, actually, I believe. And I apologize about that. I just felt like I needed a break from this series for a little while, and my videos in this series weren't doing as well as I was hoping. I'm thinking that Game of Thrones season 8 angered a lot of people, and people just didn't want to hear anything more about the series, because season 8 pissed them off so much. So I decided it would be best for me to take a break from ASOIAF Origins and, further, basically just become a better entertainer through my other videos, trial and error. So after 2 months of working on other things and trying to get better at doing this kind of stuff, I'm going to be talking about Stannis Baratheon, the younger brother of Robert Baratheon, who I've also made a video about. If you haven't watched all of my other ASOIAF Origins videos, I'd recommend go and check them out now. Although, fair warning, some of them, especially the earlier ones, are a little bit cringy because I was just getting used to this format of video. So anyway, without further ado, let's talk about Stannis Baratheon. Stannis Baratheon was born in 264 AC to Steffon Baratheon and Cassana Estermont. He had two brothers, an older one named Robert and a younger one named Renly. Even as a kid, Stannis Baratheon wasn't a very happy person, and it's very likely that he suffered from undiagnosed chronic depression. His parents did all they could to make Stannis smile, but he never did. It probably didn't help much that Stannis was a middle child and was thus overlooked by his parents quite often. The family maester, Cresson, looked after Stannis the most as a child because he saw how introverted and unhappy that Stannis really was, and even considered him to be an unloved child. When he was young, Stannis nursed an injured hawk back to health and named it Proudwing, but the hawk couldn't fly higher than the treetops, so Robert mocked Stannis and called it Weakwing. Stannis' own uncle told him to get rid of the bird because it made Stannis look like a fool. His own words, not mine. Stannis would be further traumatized as a kid when he personally witnessed his parents' deaths. They had been on a trip to Volantis on the orders of the Mad King to find a woman of Valyrian birth for Prince Rhaegar Targaryen to get married to. While they didn't succeed on their mission, they did find a local fool named Patchface, who they purchased in hopes of curing Stannis' unending sadness. Unfortunately, though, as their ship was pulling into Shipbreaker Bay off the coast of Storm's End, they crashed and sank. Robert and Stannis had been watching the ship pull in from the balcony of the castle, and thus witnessed their parents' deaths. The only survivor of the wreck was Patchface, who went insane from the amount of salt water he consumed, and thus he only made Stannis more unhappy as the years went on. It was because of his parents' tragic deaths that Stannis lost his faith in the gods. Despite his depression and lack of piousness, Stannis was still an incredibly honorable man and a capable leader. He inherited his father and brother's brilliance in battle and became a notoriously hardened commander. Stannis was probably the most feared commander in Westeros besides his brother Robert and Tywin Lannister. When Robert was crowned king and began a rebellion against House Targaryen, Stannis was torn between supporting his family and doing the honorable thing of supporting the king. Considering that Stannis never really liked Robert that much, and also considering how honorable a man Stannis is, I personally would not have been all that surprised if he sided with the Mad King in this war, but in the end he supported his brother's claim to the throne and held Storm's End for him for over a year. The Stormlands were not all on Robert's side, though, and neither were any of the neighboring kingdoms, so they all banded together and attempted to conquer Storm's End from Stannis. Storm's End, however, was too formidable of a fortress to be invaded, and so the Targaryen loyalists chose to instead wait Stannis out and let him starve to death. This plan almost worked, but luckily a smuggler named Davos Seaworth decided to give up his life of crime for the sake of his growing family, and so he snuck in rations to Baratheon forces with his ship, mostly onions, which later earned Davos the nickname of the Onion Knight. It was thanks to Davos that Stannis was able to keep a hold of Storm's End until Robert's forces could arrive and relieve the siege. After the siege, Stannis personally knighted Davos. However, Davos's fingertips had to be cut off due to his life of crime. Davos requested Stannis cut them off himself, and Stannis did so. Davos was so grateful to Stannis for giving him a new life and promoting him from, his life of crime, that he actually named one of his future sons after Stannis. Davos is probably Stannis' only true friend, and he regularly aided him from that point on. After the war, King Robert sent Stannis to capture the island of Dragonstone and capture Viserys and Daenerys Targaryen, the Mad King's remaining children, but he was ultimately too late as they had already fled to Essos. Much to Stannis' anger, Renly was named Lord of Storm's End instead of him. I personally think it's understandable that Stannis would be angry because he did spend over a year protecting Storm's End on Robert's behalf, and not only did he never get a thank you for it, but he was also forced to sit idly by while his clueless younger brother was given the family castle instead. Stannis was instead made the Prince of Dragonstone, which Robert meant to be an honor, but Stannis took it as an insult. Traditionally, the Prince of Dragonstone is seen as the heir apparent to the Iron Throne, but I guess Stannis wanted Storm's End more. Robert would name Stannis as his master of ships, which earned him a place on the small council, alongside his younger brother Renly, the master of laws. Stannis would end up marrying Selyse Florent, a very unpleasant woman who he despised and only married because it was expected of him to do so. Some people have speculated that Stannis is a closeted gay man, but personally, I think that Stannis just isn't interested in anything, men or women. Regardless, Stannis would return to Dragonstone very rarely to see his wife, and called having sex with her his duty rather than his privilege. The pair would end up having a daughter together named Shireen, who is probably the first member of his family that Stannis actually cared about since his parents died. When Shireen was inflicted with grayscale, Stannis searched all over the world for a cure and was luckily able to find one, but his daughter was still left with a noticeable scar on her face from the disease. Stannis does truly care about and love his daughter, and I think this story about her grayscale proves that Stannis isn't a soulless guy and he is capable of loving others. Robert would send his bastard son, Edric Storm, off to Dragonstone to be fostered by Stannis, but Stannis immediately would ship him off to Renly at Storm's End because he considered Edric as an insult to his house's honor, though he would end up changing his mind later, and Edric and his daughter Shireen would end up becoming close friends. During the Greyjoy Rebellion, Stannis led the royal fleet to victory against the Iron Fleet off the coast of Fair Isle, and then again on Great Wick. Stannis was notably against prostitution and attempted to convince Robert to make it illegal, but Robert said no. In the end, though, Stannis did make it illegal on Dragonstone. In the late 290s AC, Stannis began to suspect that the royal children, Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen Baratheon, weren't Robert's kids. He saw Edric Storm's obvious Baratheon traits of having dark eyes and hair and being hard as steel, while the royal children were all green-eyed, blonde-haired, and kind of weak. So Stannis and the Hand of the King, Jon Arryn, were able to managed to deduce, that they were bastards born of incest between Queen Cersei and her own brother Jaime. However, when Jon Arryn mysteriously died soon after, Stannis quickly made up an excuse and fled to Dragonstone, worried about his own safety and the safety of his family. When Robert was killed in a boar hunt and Joffrey promptly seized the Iron Throne, Stannis began hiring sellswords and building ships, ultimately declaring himself the true king of Westeros. It should be noted, however, that Stannis didn't actually care about ruling necessarily. In fact, it's heavily implied that he doesn't want to be king, but he's only rebelling because he cares about being honorable and doing his duty, as he feels that he absolutely should be the next in line since Robert's children were not actually his kids. His younger brother Renly, however, also makes a claim for the Iron Throne, and he actually gains more support than Stannis due to his natural charisma and his likability. Stannis, meanwhile, named Alliser Florent, his wife's uncle, as his Hand of the King, and also brought in a Shadowbinder from Asshai named Melisandre. Melisandre greatly believed that Stannis was the hero, Azor Ahai, reborn to face the others in the north. Melisandre actually introduced Stannis to her own religious beliefs in R'hllor, the Lord of Light, which Stannis made the only legal religion on Dragonstone, though he himself doesn't actually believe in it. Stannis is regularly offered by King Robb Stark to forge an alliance together, but Stannis says no because that would mean that he'd only rule half of Westeros instead of all of it, which he's entitled to. Stannis would begin an extramarital affair with Melisandre, and she would give birth to a shadow demon that Stannis would use to assassinate his brother Renly. He would then create another shadow demon with her that he would use to assassinate Sir Courtenay Penrose and take control of Storm's End. After this, Stannis, with help of his only true friend Davos Seaworth, attempted to capture King's Landing during the Battle of the Blackwater, but ultimately failed due to a combination of Tyrion Lannister's wildfire trap and Tywin Lannister's timely alliance with House Tyrell. However, Stannis and Davos would manage to escape. Hand of the King, Alistair Florent, would end up losing faith in Stannis' cause after their defeat and attempted to betray him to the Lannisters by offering Shireen up to marry Prince Tommen Baratheon, but luckily Stannis discovered this and had him executed for treason. Davos would blame their loss on Melisandre, who he attempted to murder but was arrested when his plans became known. To everyone's surprise, including Davos especially, Stannis actually pardoned Davos and made him Lord of the Rainwater and his new Hand of the King to replace Alistair Florent. Melisandre tried to convince Stannis to sacrifice Edric Storm to use his king's blood and curse his enemies, but Stannis refused, and so they simply leeched Edric instead and used 3 drops of his blood to curse Kings Robb Stark, Balon Greyjoy, and Joffrey Baratheon, who would all die one by one soon afterwards. After seeing that Edric's blood was a success, Stannis became more open to the idea of sacrificing Edric, so Davos had Edric sailed away to safety. It should be noted that Stannis never wanted to sacrifice Edric, but felt like he had to. Luckily, Stannis didn't have Davos arrested again, but instead he would heed his advice about sailing to the Wall and making allies with the Night's Watch by helping them against King Mance Rayder. Stannis would leave his wife and daughter at Eastwatch before proceeding to Castle Black, where he saved Jon Snow from being killed by the wildlings. Stannis had Mance burned at the stake, but unknown to him, Melisandre used glamour magic to make the man Stannis burned look like Mance, while the real Mance is still alive. If you're wondering why Melisandre would go behind Stannis' back like this, it's because at this point, Melisandre is beginning to lose her faith in the idea that Stannis is Azor Ahai, and is beginning to suspect that it might be somebody else, possibly Jon Snow, but who knows at this point in the story. Anyway, Stannis accepts any wildling in his army as long as they convert to the Lord of Light, which many do. Stannis would offer to legitimize Jon Snow as Jon Stark and make him Lord of Winterfell, but much to his annoyance, Jon Snow refused to forgo his Night's Watch vows and chooses to stay at the Wall. Stannis continues to subtly pester him about his offer until Jon is named Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Stannis heeds Jon Snow's advice about meeting with the Northern Mountain clans before marching south, and manages to actually gain 3,000 more men in his army as a result. Stannis also manages to capture Deepwood Motte from Asha Greyjoy, officially liberating the North from the Ironborn for good. Meanwhile, Tycho Nestoris of the Iron Bank is fed up with Queen Cersei not paying her debts, and so he goes off to find Stannis and support him instead. He eventually finds him and gives him a letter from Jon Snow. The letter tells him that the Karstarks are only pretending to be loyal to Stannis and plan to betray him, so Stannis has them all arrested. Currently, Stannis is preparing for the Battle of Winterfell against Ramsay Bolton, which I personally hope he wins, but we won't know for sure until the Winds of Winter finally comes out. Quote from Stannis Baratheon: Lord Seaworth is a man of humble birth, but he reminded me of my duty. When all I could think of was my rights, I had the cart before the horse, Davos said. I was trying to win the throne to save the kingdom, when I should have been trying to save the kingdom to win the throne. Stannis Baratheon has had a very troubled life, and even though he isn't always the nicest person, and even considers burning his nephew alive, he's still a pretty tragic character, and it's clear that he's trying to do the right thing no matter what it takes. So even though Stannis isn't my favorite character, I find him to be easy to root for and at times very difficult to truly hate. And that was my video on the life of Stannis Baratheon. Thank you guys for watching this video. In the next episode of this series, whenever it comes out, I do intend to talk about Stannis' daughter Shireen and the family fool Patchface, so stay tuned for that. If you guys enjoyed this video, remember to give it a thumbs up, share this video with all of your friends and family on all of your various social media platforms, ring that notification bell, and let me know in the comments down below what you liked and didn't like about this video, and I'll see all you dudes and chicks in the next video.